In this video, we'll be talking about multiple reducers and why would you create multiple reducers, what kind of benefits the multiple reducers will provide to you. Let's say that we are working on our same banking application and we need to add the users also. And just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to omit the password, just the username is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and update the state to have a users array because we want our users to be accessible globally throughout our application. So I have created a new property called users and it's an array, which means that we can add multiple users. In order to add the user, I will go ahead and create an action. Action, add new user. We will provide the username and it is going to build up that particular action. So we're going to go ahead and return type, which can be add user, with a particular payload. In this case, we don't really want to send in as an object because the only thing in the payload that we're trying to pass is the username. So we can simply go ahead and attach username. So this is our action. It's called action add new user. Now if we scroll down to our accounts, which is the one acting as a reducer, we can go ahead and create another case over here for adding a user. So if the type is add user, we will return a new global state. First, we will copy the old state, and then for the users array, we will take the state.users.concat. Concat is a function that is available on the array. It's a JavaScript function. And concat is different from push because push is going to modify the existing array, while concat is going to return you a brand new array. And that is what we're trying to do. We are not trying to modify the existing array. We're trying to create a brand new array because the global state is immutable. You cannot really change it. The only thing you can do with the global state is you can replace it with the new state. We will take action.payload. Now we can have a delete user and update user and all of those different things. That is perfectly fine. But right now we just have add user. Let's go ahead and give it for a spin. We're going to go ahead and say store.dispatch action add new user, and we're going to pass in a certain username. So I'm just going to pass in John Doe. Let's go ahead and refresh it. And right over here, the last one, you can see that our array contains one value. Let's go ahead and see what that value is. And you can see it is actually John Doe. So it looks like this is working perfectly fine. Now we have one reducer, which is called accounts, and it is managing accounts, which includes deposit and withdraw. And it is also managing adding a new user. So it has multiple jobs. It needs to make sure that it updates the account with the deposit and withdraw, and it's also responsible for adding a new user and maybe even deleting a user, updating a user, and other stuff related to the user. Eventually, you will see that if you start adding all of these different actions inside the accounts reducer, then your accounts reducer is going to grow up to be 600 to 1,000 lines of code. It is still going to work, but it will become a maintenance nightmare. So now the question is, how can we make sure that the accounts reducer is managing only the accounts? So anything to do with adding a new account or depositing an account or withdrawing from an account, anything related to accounts itself, the account reducer is doing, and anything that has something to do with adding a new user, removing a user, updating a user, giving privileges to the user, that has to be done in some other reducer. We will also go ahead and break up our state. Right now we just have one state called default state. When we break up our reducer into multiple reducer, each reducer will be working on one slice of the state. So let's go ahead and create those slices. I'm going to go ahead and say accounts state. The account state is only managing the accounts. So it has checking account and savings account. We're also going to go ahead and create another state called user state. This state is only managing the slice of the state which is for managing the users. So in this case, we only have users. Next, we can go ahead and update our accounts reducer so that it is only managing the account state. There we go. And since the account reducer is only managing and updating checking account and savings account, which is based on the deposit and the withdrawal, we will make sure to remove the add user. That's not really the job of the account reducer to work with the adding a user or removing a user. That's someone else's job. So let's go ahead and remove that. Next, we will go ahead and try to create a reducer who will be responsible for updating the users. So just like the accounts reducer, we will create another reducer. We will call it users, where state will be the user state, that slice of the state. Now, even though we will eventually have multiple reducer, one thing to note is that in the end, all of these reducers will join together to form one single reducer. Now we will perform a switch on the action.type. And now we can go ahead and say add user. And for adding a user, first of all, we're going to go ahead and copy all the old state, users, and then we will take state.users.concat and we will say action.payload. Great. So now we have two reducers. We have users reducers who is only updating the state which is for the users or that slice of the state. And then we have accounts reducer which is only updating the state which is or something to do with the accounts like checking account and savings account, withdrawing into an account or depositing into an account. But what will happen to our store? Currently, the create store is using the accounts reducer and not the users reducer. We cannot really pass an array over here, but now we have two reducers. So what should we do? We have accounts reducer and we have users reducer. Each of these reducers is managing slice or part of the global state. So we need to combine these two reducers. In Redux, we can import another function which is called combine reducers. Let's go at the bottom. We will call combine reducers and we're going to pass an object. The name of the property of the object can be anything. So I'm just going to call it accounts reducer, where the value is accounts, and users reducer, where the value is users, which actually is a reducer. The combine reducer function is going to give you a reducer. So as I said earlier on, no matter how many reducers you have in your application, In the end, all of the reducers are going to join and form one reducer. So now we can go ahead and pass this reducer to the create store. Perfect. Now, with all of these changes, let's go ahead and try to refresh. A couple of different things you can see that our user's reducer is not really initialized correctly. So let's go ahead and see what's wrong. Do you see something wrong with our user's reducer? Looking at the error message on the right-hand side, you can pause the video if you want and try to figure this out on your own. But the problem is simply not returning the state. Let's go ahead and return the state. Now at the bottom, you can see that we are performing some tasks which are for accounts reducers. And one task in the end is for users reducer. You can see that our display is a little bit changed. And the reason is that now we are displaying the state, but the state is managed by individual reducers, whether it is accounts reducers or users reducers. So if I open this up, I should be able to see different things that are managed by the accounts reducer, which in this case is checking account or savings, as well as users reducers. And you can see that everything is working perfectly fine because we are able to add a new user. So in the end, we learned that in large applications or even medium-sized applications, it is always a good idea to create multiple reducers. Each reducer will be responsible for updating a particular slice of the state. And that will help us benefit in the long term. You will not end up with one reducer with thousands of lines of code. Now we can go ahead and even delete the default state because we're not really using default state. Each reducer is managing its own slice of the state. So this is how we create multiple reducers in Redux.